All right, good afternoon again. I have the luxury of being the last speaker before you go to lunch, so I'll try not to be very long. Um, but in looking at the conference, this is a pension and economic conference, right? And for pensions to thrive, you have to have some sort of investment return, right? And the department that I work in at CFAL, we are responsible for, in a lot of cases, coordinating funding for a lot of these projects. So for the pensions to get the returns that allow them to pay the benefits and our mutual funds to provide returns to investors, we just want to kind of show some of the projects we've been involved with over the past few years. Again, as I mentioned, not every plan wants 100% invested in government bonds, right? So when these projects come up, we try to make sure incorporate some sort of Bahamian investment component into the project so that Bahamians can participate and derive some of the benefits from projects that are taking place in the economy. And just to be clear, anytime we involved in a project, pension plans would approve those projects independently, right? So it's not like CFAL is just pouring clients' money into projects. But recently we've started and we've taken a big investment ourselves and our clients into the energy sector. As we all know, the Bahamas struggles with reliability and affordability of electricity. A lot of this is based on outdated infrastructure, right? And interestingly, I think it was Larry that spoke about the US grid being 50, 60 years old, and ours is probably somewhere around that same, timeline. To adapt and be resilient, of course, businesses and individuals have had to buy backup generators, and it's a large upfront cost. And then there's the ongoing cost of having to fill that. So recently, the government had a shift in its strategy whereby the government would, they release a national energy policy, more so geared toward independent power producers, right? So the strategy is more so where companies will now generate power and sell that power to the government, rather than the government coming up with funding to buy generators to fund these projects. So CFAL, for example, we've been funding some of these projects in 2021. Focal, and some of you may know the subsidiary Bahamas utility companies, we would have issued close to $98 million in securities for them over a period. So as I mentioned earlier, when these come up, you tend to not have clients wanting to invest in government bonds, and these are opportunities for them. And these were used to purchase generators, which are located at Clifton and Blue Hills. And you can see some of the images. So Focal right now is generating a lot of power and selling that to the government, which saves the government from having to borrow via BPL or itself $100 million, right? And one of the reasons we were excited about partnering with this as well is, as you may know, the BPL would rent generators from foreigners, right, to cover any shortfall they may have had, right? And why do we need to rent generators from foreigners if we can buy the generators and produce energy ourselves? So, and Focal, of course, is a public company which is owned by thousands and thousands of Bahamians, right? So these are ways we're trying to get more of the economic activity in the country and the economy to get in the pockets of Bahamians. And of course, as they sell power, they make profits, they distribute dividends to the investors. One of the other projects we've worked at, and I say our and we because anytime CFAL funds a project, we don't just give the company money and walk away, right? We're very involved, or we stay involved. We have representation to make sure that our investments are protected, and as best as possible, we can mitigate risks. Of course, in any project, there's never a full elimination of risk, but we want to be aware of what's going on in the project. So if you see CFAL bring something to the public, it means that we believe in it, we bought into it, and we believe it's successful. Now, this is kind of a first of its kind where the government separated the transmission grid and distribution network from BPL in of itself. It's a $130 million upgrade project, and we actually raised $141 million between November 2023 and July of 2024. And then I think it's good to provide some clarity on how we raise money as well. Typically, we go to institutional investors first to get some of the upfront funding, right? Because when we do these projects, you have to order supplies 12, 18 months before they can even be delivered, and sometimes 2 to 3 years before the project even comes to the public. So sometimes we go to the market with a $100 million bond and everyone beats us up and say, we don't care, small amount can invest in it. But we always try to incorporate some sort of retail ownership in it, and I'll speak to that as well. But this project, the plan was to improve the capacity of the grid. You've probably seen this company, Bahamas Grid, some of the trucks. They're also working with a subcontractor called Pike out of Florida. And one of the benefits is, of course, Pike brings in its expertise. They're upgrading the grid, allowing it to take more energy, more capacity. Because right now the grid is pretty much at its maximum, right? It's hard to bring like new sources of power like solar energy onto the existing grid. You also probably seen these poles on the ground all around Nassau, but they're trying to make the grid as well more resilient. So these poles can handle Category 5 hurricanes, where some of the wooden poles are not as strong or have rotted over time. So this project is really trying to, and the grid is the backbone of the energy sector. So without a sustainable grid, you can't really grow. Another good benefit of this is these companies work with live wires. So if they need to do repairs in your area, they don't need to turn your power off to do it, right? So all of this has kind of contributed to, hopefully, I don't want to say there have been reductions in the amount of outages. The company has put out some reports. But if everything is executed as planned, we believe this will be a good project for the country. Previously, prior to this project, the country would, let's say every 100 kilowatts of power produced, only about 85 would get to the end consumer. So a lot of electricity was being wasted as well. And this is to try and fix that problem as well. We also funded a project recently called, or raised funding for a project called EA Energy, which is a Luther and Abaco. It's a $140 million project, which will be a mix of solar and natural gas. And Eleuthera and Abaco are two of the fastest growing islands in the Bahamas. Abaco, its power demand today is higher than it was pre-Hurricane Dorian. So they've recovered, and now it's again putting a strain on the current system. And if you know anyone who lives in Eleuthera, they will tell you that the power situation is very bad there. For this company to date, we've raised $126.7 million, which included a retail offering that was just concluded in July of 2025. Again, we try to do the retail offerings for equity closer to completion of the project, because if we tell you in 2023 that you won't get a dividend until 2028, you won't be very excited about that, right? So we kind of take some of the risks out of the project and bring the public in closer to but there won't be any dividends in these projects prior to 2027. So these are not instant gratification. You don't get rich overnight, but in the long term, we know that energy will be needed. This is just a graphical image illustration of the plant. You can see the solar panels as well as the natural gas tanks and the generator house. And the final project is called Island Power Producers. Mike would have let the cat out of the bag. But this is a $180 million project that we're raising funding for as well, which will introduce shore power at the cruise port. To date, we've raised $69 million in equity, and we have a bond offering scheduled for November of this year to raise an additional $100 million in debt. We've concluded the retail part in July as well, so we did both of those offerings simultaneously, and they were very well received by the public. We have thousands of investors that participated in both of them. And this plant is a combined cycle power plant. I won't get very technical into what combined cycle means, but it will use natural gas to generate power and distribute that via subsea cable to the cruise port, which will then plug directly into the ships. So you could see some graphical images of it. It's going to be right behind the container port. So the first picture on the left shows you where it'll be located, and the picture on the right shows you an illustration of the plant. And the theme of the conference, Building Resilience, you could probably see that all of these equipment will be put on piles, right? Because we know that sea levels are rising. When there's surge, water will come up. So we've kind of factored all that into the project to raise the equipment off the floor so it's always protected. And again, this is part of, if we're putting person's money into projects, we need to be sure that we do our due diligence. This is just some of the work. If you go to Iraqi now, you will see they've started clearing, so there'll be a bit more civil work. And these, for example, are some of the equipment. Like I mentioned, these equipment were ordered last year, and they're about 50% complete, so this is being constructed in India. They will have to be shipped to New Providence. So these projects tend to take a lot of time, and that's why you see us do the funding in certain stages. But we just wanted to give, and also these this company will have the ability to distribute gas to other family islands. So a project like EA Energy, some of the other family islands where the government has issued RFPs, the independent power producers, they will be able to buy gas from this, because a tanker cannot go into like Eleuthera, right? They don't have the port facility that's deep enough to accommodate those ships. So the ship will come to Nassau, offload, and then that'll be put onto ISO tankers and shipped to the family island. So again, we believe that energy is the backbone of any economy. It cannot grow without it. And like I said, we're always looking for new investments. These are some examples of ways that, kind of public-private partnerships to use Bahamian capital to invest in the economy and improve returns. And hopefully, as everything is built out by the end of next year, early into 2027, we could see improvements in the reliability as well as affordability of electricity in the Bahamas. Thank you.